favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, for mana, carried. And the next item is 7.2, which is just a brief update from Don in terms of significant things that have happened in the organisation since our last meeting in July. Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. To comment NZTA, what Katanaki advised that our funding application for low value, low risk projects and mostly safety projects has been curtailed, and has funding for footpaths and footpaths maintenance. So we'll be bringing a report forward to council on that as to what that might mean, because there's still a local share available if we wish to pursue that work in an budget in an unsubsidised manner. But that's one thing. Annual reports underway. There's a couple of things that are outstanding there. The revaluation of assets has to be tested each year. We believe we haven't met the threshold of having to revalue. We've yet to get formal sign-off from them about that, but that's bear in mind. And the other thing that has a bearing on next year's racetrack courses, property revaluations. And there's been a bit of a glitch here. I believe the Valuer General has queried some of the underlying underlying information in some of the work that our provider has undertaken, and there appears to be a bit of a delay on getting that. Now, that just squeezes everything up, because normally, obviously, we have to go out to the public and people make submissions or whatever. So there's a risk there that we have to keep an eye on. Waikato Water's done well, which is a response to the new legislative frame the government have adopted as far as water's delivery. That's at a crucial point, and we're getting commitment from most councils, and this council it will be making a formal decision at the end of the month, but all councillors have informally indicated that they're supportive of it. So that's happening, and we do have funds set aside to undertake that work from the Better Off funding that council allocated a little while ago. The other thing that I've asked staff to do is specifically report to the Risk and Assurance Committee from this point onwards, risk management around three major projects: the stadium, the Matamata playground, and the Matamata wastewater plant, all of which are high value. And they each have different risks, but I thought it's appropriate that we keep the committee informed about that. And the other thing that you'll be seeing from next meeting onwards is a quarterly compliance report from our three waters, and which keeps you informed on any risk around non-compliance. So I think it's something that we've been missing in terms of regular update for a little while. Okay.
Any questions from committee members? I've got a couple for that. Okay. So just in terms of the NZTA, were we banking on that funding, i.e. was that funding?
Well, through our program, yes, we were banking on it. So the program either has to be reduced, or we decide to not proceed with it at all.
Because I guess we had an understanding that it was new stuff, not just maintenance, and so the footpaths is caught on the maintenance side of it, which is, that's existing. So yeah, that was probably a bit of a surprise. And of course there was some speed management work that have been planned for that's now unsubsidised. So challenges. And in terms of the funding, how much of that?
800, I think, for the minor safety work, and I'm not sure how much for footpaths, but it's probably close to $1 million. All that.
So not a small amount. Okay. And in terms of the quarterly compliance report, are you envisaging things like the status of resource consents or something?
Yeah, compliance with the resource consents to do with three waters. the performance of the plants according to the conditions of the consent, that sort of thing.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Hi, Jim.
Just when you mentioned the stadium, you're talking about the stadium in Matamata-Piako. So there are 3 Matamata projects that are.
Yep.
Are they? Would I dare to say at risk of finishing, or
I beg your pardon.
would I dare to say at risk of finishing, or?
Well, there's risk at the moment of funding gap, of course. But things have been done in order to try and address that. And then once, and assuming the project proceeds, there's a whole lot of construction and procedural risk that we feel it's appropriate to keep the committee informed of.
Do you have a priority out of those 3? I mean, I look at them and I have a priority, but do you?
No, I think they're all wonderful projects. I mean, to be fair, the wastewater plant is, it's not optional. The other 2 have an element of.
That was it. Thank you.
Yeah. The playground probably is sitting at in 3rd place though, because it's dependent on community funding really in many ways to get underway. So the sort of
we might have to. We can always trim that project back. And do it in stages, but that's all part of why we want to keep you informed about how we're managing risk.
Wastewater would be the one.
Oh yeah,
yes,
it is. Yeah. Well, it's a compliance.
And then just quickly, thank you for recognising that in your report in terms of the evaluations that could have a significant impact on what the timeline for that could be. And then also in terms of the rate strike as well. So wasn't it Tauranga that went down by 8% recently with their new rebuild? And so I wouldn't be surprised if none less that's coming through. And thank you for the update on the Waikato Water's done well. I mean, it's going to be a significant risk in terms of not just here, but all across Aotearoa, New Zealand. And look forward to future updates on that. So unless we have any other questions, the recommendation in front of us is that the information be received. I'm happy to move. Can I please have a seconder?
I'll second.
By Joan seconding. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, Kumana, carried. Thanks, Don. Appreciate that. Item 7.3 on our agenda is our annual self-assessment. So you should have received the Survey Monkey version, which included an additional component relating to the composition of the committee. I guess my question to committee members is, do we have anything else that we would like to see in there, or are we happy to go again with the same questions that we had last time, which would, in my opinion, give us a bit of consistency and responses?
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay, excellent. So I guess the other thing that I will point out as well is the report says that it's going to go to Audit New Zealand to complete it, but it will not. I did say that they're welcome to complete it, however, they're not expected to. And then there were a couple of recommendations from the previous results of the self-assessment, which is me working with the governance team to make sure that we have consistency in the reports, and also if reports don't make it to a particular committee meeting, understanding what the impact of that is. So we're still working through those things at the moment. Other than that, our expectation is to receive the report, provide comments, which is my understanding we're happy with it, and the survey will be sent out to us, and please complete it by the 14th of October, so that we're in a strong position for me to consolidate those results for the October, I think it is, 29 October.
So we've already got it. So the sooner people complete it, the better, because they'll forget if they don't complete it straight away.
Yeah. So you've got homework. So it has it in terms of, I don't know whether it's live. The link is that a live link?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
All right.
Yes.
Well, you've got your homework.
Got it yesterday.
Yes, I saw it come through, but I thought it was more for the understanding of what the questions were. So fantastic. So, have you done it already?
Not saying.
Oh, she has.
Well, no. Fantastic. Come on. So we are receiving, and then we're making sure that we are completing the survey, also the self-assessment. I'm moving. Can I please have a seconder? We have Councillor Kevin seconding. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, Kumana, carried. Thank you. The next item is 8.1, which is safety and wellness reports. Hello, Kate. How are you?
Thank you.
just a brief update if you could, and then we'll go to questions if that's okay.
So, yes, I've provided quite a few reports. I realise that there might be a little bit of information overload. Last year was certainly a busy year for us with some new staff needing to be onboarded on the safety and wellness team, and lots of policy review. So it's great to have that under our belt. And of course, now we're at the stage where we're looking ahead for what we're hoping to achieve this year. Looking at the objectives that we'd set last year, we didn't quite manage to get them all completed, but certainly made some good progress.
Sorry, folks.
Oh,
yeah.
I had my vision. Sorry. Clearly was wrong.
Obviously, you are like all the chocolate stuff.
Yeah, well, fair enough.
It's all right. We normally start the time.
I had it.
What are the risks?
I'm sure it's on the calendar.
Okay, Joe.
All right, it's all right.
One of the risks,
I'm here.
We'll catch up over morning tea, Kate.
that we were certainly quite focused on was dealing with aggressive behaviour, and been some great collaboration between teams and a lot of progress made in that space over the year. So I'm really happy with that. It continues to be a challenge for us. I think there's still further work to do in that area.
Any questions from committee members on the health and safety? Oh, sorry, safety and wellness?
I was concerned about that area too. So all the frontline staff are having the training.
Yes, so we have two levels of training that we provide. One that is what we call customer conflict, which is a half-day training course, which is sort of targeting office staff mainly. And so all of our frontline staff do that. And then for staff who are working out in the field, who are more likely to perhaps be on their own, animal control would be an example, but a lot of our other staff do that as well. They do a full day personal safety and self-defense course. So yes, we do invest quite heavily in that training.
And just in terms of the leave, has any of the behaviour, the aggressive behaviour, meant that people are taking leave because of it?
Perhaps that would be difficult to track through the way we currently track leave at the moment. I think when people take time off, it's often a combination of factors. So I think, yeah, I off the top of my head, I can't say a resounding yes on that one, but it is possible that it can contribute to stress. So yeah, we've I think one example perhaps where somebody needed a little bit of time off just to recover from probably more a situation where there are multiple episodes of people being aggressive in behaviour. What we do sort of in the shorter term, maybe this is a better answer to your question, is actually if somebody's in that situation, we do encourage them to take a walk around the block, go and have a coffee, just kind of come down after that situation, because it's definitely, especially if you're working in customer services, for example, the phone rings again. You know, you're straight into the next call. So we do encourage people to take a break, and that's had to deal with somebody who was verbally aggressive in that situation.
Based on those numbers, it looks like aggressive behaviour is like it's one a week, more than one a week,
Yes.
on an average. And trespass vandalism more than one a week as well.
So some of that
Is that from here, or is that like over our entire facilities?
that's all of our facilities. So some of the vandalism things will be fairly low level property damage. So that gets included in that as well. And sorry, I should say that the trespass doesn't necessarily mean we've issued a trespass notice. Just means that people, a good example is people entering the swimming pool complex up here at night when it's closed. Yes, we do.
Yeah, I think we can add to that. I think the reality is it's not unique to this district.
No.
It is a societal change, and even to the point where us as councillors and the plans that have been put in place, even to protect us in this room, it's all been stepped up because of this behaviour. And yeah.
Is there any way, like, grade these things, like, as in, like, dangerous,
The scale.
scale, some description? Because I mean, graffiti is annoying. But someone coming into you with a gun, obviously, is like first level. So is there any way of, like, what grading these things are?
To reflect that in the report, you mean? Yes, we could do that.
I think that's a really helpful suggestion as well, just to give transparency on that. And then I think I made a comment at a previous committee meeting that I didn't want to see this normalised, that we are accepting that this behaviour is what's going on in society at the moment, so therefore it's okay, which is not.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we change it around.
I guess one of the actions I took prior to our rates being struck was did a Facebook post and talked about acknowledging people's frustration and that, but please don't take it out on our staff. And because we're trying to obviously support our staff as well, and that's it's happened in the past. I know when Ash was there, he did the same, and of course, if it's abusive, people will get reported to the police. And I have had one case.
Any other questions from the committee on the remainder of the report? And I had asked some kind of behind the scenes just to get to improve my understanding in relation to how we do health and safety here. Nothing that I think hasn't been answered or needs to be. I think maybe the only one that I bring up is that we had an audit, so to speak, an ACC focused audit. So it'd be good to understand for the committee our intention in relation to those recommendations and what we're going to do, just to be transparent on that. Thanks.
Damstra. How long have we been using Damstra?
We have been using that since before I started, I think probably about 15 years. It's on my to-do list actually to see whether
I was
we.
going to say, surely there's some better ones out there.
Yes.
Better ones.
We have quite a few workarounds in Damstra, which are frustrating for us. So that is something that I would like to look at. It's a huge task to change systems. So it's not, to be honest, it's not on my to-do list this financial year.
Not high for us.
Yeah, and I don't think it's isolated to the health and safety system that we have. Yeah, I can see people nodding around the room. Can't wait. Yeah, so if we can go back to if you can give us just a bit of an understanding in relation to the audit, the findings. And
yes, absolutely. Sorry, I should have. I know I've got some notes on that, but so to give the background, first of all, this ACC accredited employee audit is designed for larger companies to become accredited with ACC so that they essentially self-insure. Because as you'll be aware, we pay ACC levies. It's not financially really viable for companies at our size. And we do get a discount through having relatively low claims rates. So we do get that at the moment. But the opportunity to do this audit was really because Mibin, who's in my team, is doing some postgraduate health and safety study, and this was one of his assignments. And so I said to him, great, do it on us, and that will be useful information for us. A couple of disclaimers around it. Obviously, he's working for me. So it's certainly not the same as having an external audit. He only looked at the first 9 elements, which is around the system. So there wasn't a focus particularly on running focus groups or engaging with a whole lot of employees. And he didn't look at injury management, which is the other big component that you'd normally have if you were going through that process with ACC. There were a few issues that came up that we didn't score top marks on. One of them was around having clear accountabilities that were specific to people's positions related to health and safety. And this is something that I've been working on anyway, and we actually are going to be integrating that into updated position descriptions over the course of this year. So that was on our to-do list anyway. I'm just trying to remember what the other two items were. Can you remember that on your?
Yes, I do. Procedures that explain how to determine if health monitoring is here.
Yes, so this is one of those procedures that's very clearly in Hayley's head and my head, but not written down. So that's fine. That's an easy fix. It's great that he picked up that gap in our processes. So we'll be doing that.
And there's a specific process to acknowledge innovation or excellence in health and safety.
Yes. So this is something that I think has been raised at this committee before, because we used to use try and use safety observations for that, and it wasn't working very well. I think this is something that we do need to do some further work and some thinking about how we can do this effectively. It ties in with some of the objectives that we're looking for setting this year. So we'll be doing some further work on that. I'm quite ready to come with a look.
Thank you. And do we have an external audit in our future?
So we don't have anything scheduled at the moment. In the past, we used to do the WSMP ACC audit, but that's been moved quite some time ago. We have discussed at executive team the option of doing a Safe Plus audit, which is what's widely used and recommended by WorkSafe. And at the time, we were just going into the organisational review, so there was a feeling that perhaps the timing wasn't right to do that. But it is something that we could discuss again.
Yeah, I think we should keep it on the horizon of having an external view of how we're doing, especially for something that's so critical to our staff members and the organisation. The only other comment that I'll make on the report is that I struggled a little bit from my knowledge in terms of understanding the critical risks and where we were at across each of them. So the staff have given me the understanding, and then also I struggled a little bit with the use of our systems, policies and processes, because I felt that we were really focusing on developing policies versus giving transparency around the amount of communication of those policies and the embeddedness through training. So the staff again have given me further information around what you do. But just letting you know that I had been asking those questions. There are no further queries, but the recommendation in front of us is that the information be received, and I think we'll take on board the point around the aggressive behaviour or the behaviour being prioritised, so there's a sense of transparency on that. I'm happy to move. Can I please have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Kevin. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Sorry, Dean, my head jumped. I missed 7.4 because it's on at 11:40 on this run sheet. The next item is 8.2, which is our update on professional indemnity and public liability insurance cover. Hello, Roger. Welcome. I think we can take the report as read and open for questions from the committee if there are any. Thank you. Don't jump.
Really self-explanatory, isn't it?
Fine. I had a couple of quick, easy questions, which is I was trying to understand when we had said in the paper that all claims prior to 1st of July 2024 would stay with Marsh, and I didn't have an idea about the number or are there many?
Yes, thank you for sending that question to me. There are actually 3 outstanding with Marsh. Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you for sending those questions to me earlier. There's actually 3 that are with Marsh at the moment. There's been none claims lodged since 1 July, so there's nothing that's gone to AM at this stage. So there's only 3 outstanding with Marsh. There are some historic ones that haven't gone anywhere, but they're still sitting there. They're unlikely. Sometimes people put a claim in against council. They then take their own legal advice, and they probably advise this won't go anywhere. There's no case to answer here. So one is Harlow Holdings. So that's about Pepper Street, 26 Rockford. That one. And the other one is 8 Cameo Place. That's a building control aspect. And the other one is Freedom Village. I'm not quite sure the detail of that, but that's another building compliance thing.
Thank you. It was just to give us a bit of transparency on that, so we knew what was in the pipeline, so to speak. And my other question in relation to the paper was, I didn't have a sense of, in the paper it talks about the PI and PL insurance being taken out to give us cover, but I didn't know how that aligned with our risk appetite.
They're just one of the policies. The council carries about 12 policies at this stage. Public liability and professional indemnity are 2 of those policies. Historically, it's been with Marsh. All the others have been with Aon through the Waikato collab basis. So it's just replacing the policy through a different provider.
Okay, like for like. Cool. Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Otherwise, the recommendation I would imagine is to receive the report.
I'll have to move that.
Adrian moving, I'm seconding. Oh, sorry.
No, no, it's
Sorry, Secretary James seconding. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, come on, carried. Thank you. Appreciate that. Our next item on the agenda is 8.3, which is the procurement annual report. Sanjita and Tamania. Kia ora, ladies. We're a little bit pushed for time today, so we won't be asking for an in-depth overview of what's in the paper, but maybe just a few salient comments, and then we'll open for questions. Kia ora.
Thank you for this opportunity. So I would like to bring to your attention that there has been, so the audit has actually revealed improved outcomes in comparison to the previous year. So there might be very minor issues. Improvement that I've seen within the space is that there's a lot of people who are reaching out to me if they do talk about some sort of procurement strategies that they need to undertake. They do get in touch with me, and they provide copies of their plan or engage me prior to make sure that things are happening in the manner that it's supposed to happen. Other than that, I had conducted a spend analysis on suppliers, and I noted that the top 10 suppliers who we were doing the most transactions with and had high expenditure, the council has contracts in place with them, and they were all done in a manner that it had a purchase order for the services. So we did go out with 8 tenders last year, which were awarded, and the audit showed a good response to the number of tenders that we went out to, from being a minimum of 4 to a maximum of 13, which confirms that we did have a great value and competition to the process that we undertook. And the report mostly talks about findings that is of poor internal controls. So that is all from me as a summary.
Awesome. Thank you. Committee members, questions, please.
It's great that it's obviously improving. I guess with if there was an opportunity for something to be not really aligned with our policy, would be those small things that just trickle along, because there's a risk there of repeated invoices and where that might go. So is there much value in those lower? Is there any? Well, perhaps better put it, is there a way to improve those smaller amount purchases? Is it from a particular department, or is it spread across the organisation?
Yeah, thank you for your question. So what's happening right now is we are creating a panel of suppliers. So which means that many of the suppliers that we go for with most spend and with more transactions sits within the maintenance sort of
categories. And for that, we are now working on a panel of suppliers, which we want to establish probably by January next year. So having a contract would make sure that we mitigate these issues.
That's great. Yeah, because I guess you'd be caught, the team would be caught reacting sometimes, perhaps, and they need to get something fixed, and they go to the nearest person or just, and I guess there's that balance between getting it fixed and following a procedure that's transparent, isn't there? That's good.
So that practice does actually add value because we want someone on the site to fix the problem for us, but it's just that people are now knowing that the procedure is that you could still do that, but you need to fulfill a procurement process, which would be called a specialized procurement. So they've started working on those sort of small things.
And they don't need to be an arduous process, do they? It's just having that step in place to ensure. No, that's great. I think that.
I was just wondering about the non-entry into authority. Is that just because of the need to do something really fast, or?
So authority is the ERP that we use to raise orders, make payment, and record all the contracts that we have so far. So it just gives us a lot of visibility when we put the contracts onto the system to say when the contracts would be due, and it would provide us more time for planning and more focus on proactive procurement strategies in comparison to reactive, so which means that we would be able to add more value to the strategies that we develop.
What's the downside of not having them in there? What are the repercussions?
So
transparency.
Transparency, accountability. So the government procurement rules and the Auditor General's principles requires that the public entities or the public organizations are accountable to the procurement and the processes. And so having these platforms provides us with some sort of provision to be transparent. So if we undertook a procurement, then if we were required 2 or 3 quotations, we have the quotations sitting on authority that we can click on and access the quotations. Or if it's a contract, then the contract is on authority, so the payments is linked to the contracts that's sitting on authority. So if anyone within the organization needs to access that contract, just clicks on authority and has access to the contract.
So do they get put in retrospectively if they don't get put in initially, or?
So they basically get missed out for putting in. So yeah, so that's where the problem could be, the visibility of the contracts that we might have.
You have a little bit of CYA here. But not having them in there seems could potentially lead to an issue, I guess, of not being able to say with, excuse the pun, with authority that something had been done according to process.
Yeah, what's the risk to us of that not being done? I guess that's an issue.
It's bad housekeeping, really, is what it is. Yeah, I mean, if I'm working on a contract and I just keep it on my computer, then no one else can see, when it expires, or there's no transparency to it.
Because the concern that I have is a business continuity risk if something happens to that person. It's just like people that save things on their desktop.
Yeah.
And so what I'm trying to understand on this report is to what extent the issues that we have are as a result of the culture that we have, and then also to what extent the system that we have. Because I don't know many organisations that have the perfect procurement system, and there are always workarounds, but also a lot of these things is time bound to do particular things and the appropriate process to follow, and sometimes there's a trade-off that's done. So I guess my question is, are we doing any work in relation to the cultural piece of bundling people down the process versus get it done to the exact minute that we need it to be done?
Yes, so as part of my policy review, I'm doing a gap analysis of There could be many times that people miss to do that because they do not have time to do that. People miss to do that because they do not have that procurement hat on or expertise to do the stuff. So I am considering all those as part of my policy review. But other than that, if I feel like that I have done an audit and I feel like that it requires some sort of attention, so I directly get in touch with the procurement participant and have discussions around how better it could be done, how it could be improved.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
I guess my concern was, how do you verify that someone needs paying and confirm that the payment's going out correctly if it's not in there?
Yeah. Can I come?
Yeah.
Perhaps I could comment first just on the cultural issue. What we as an executive team receive periodic quarterly reports from Sangita, and they identify non-compliances in all the areas. And it's for the GMs to follow up on those non-compliances. And I think, to be honest, and procurement have said, we really need leadership to push this. So giving that visibility at the executive team table gives us the ability to talk to people and push. And so that's one of the ways that the culture changes. As a part of that process, however, I think it does, inevitably we raise questions about, are we doing things as efficiently as we could? And I have to admit, I'm a bit of and I've been guilty of non-compliance. So I'm one of the guilty parties. Luckily, I don't do a lot of procurement and I don't do big procurement. So having said that, I think there's always room to improve. And I think that there are a number of ways that you can achieve the outcome. It's having the outcome in our mind very clearly, what we're trying to achieve as we go through this process. And I think the reports that Sangita give us in this report is a trigger for us to reflect on that. In terms of the processes for contract management outside of authority, we've got particular teams who are dealing with the biggest contracts, who have got very good disciplines in place. Eroding is the classic, and part of that is because of the external pressure that we have of NZTA who audit us. So we know that we won't get funding if we don't do it right. So that happens, that creates a pressure. We've got other pockets in our organisation, and me included, who don't do it as well, who are more focused perhaps at times on just trying to get the job done. So I think the audits that Sangita does and will be doing helps us promote that. But I do think that there is an opportunity for us to reflect on whether or not the way we're doing it today in terms of the use of authority is the most efficient. So I just want to reassure you that even though it's not an authority, there are good contract disciplines in place still to make sure the payments are made. I mean, down to the GM or the CEO, one of us has to sign off on the contract payment. And on that form is, this is the person who's recommended that it's to be approved. This is the manager who's approved it. Now, and I can see all the information in front of me to approve that payment. So that's control still in place. The good thing about this report, again, is it gives us visibility of what's going on and gives us an opportunity to think about how we improve. And that's where authority can help as well. So I don't know. I think a probably long-winded answer.
That's great. And you could also extend a little, because we've talked before about whether this opens us up to risk of fraud. And so if you could just cover that off too, that would be fantastic.
So having seen the non-compliances that have come through in the quarterly reports last year and previous years and seen what they are, I'm reasonably confident that those, I knew about all of the non-compliances in my area of the team. I knew what they were involved, and basically, as Sophie's pointed out in her report, it's people not doing their specialised procurement and recording, why they haven't got other quotes, that kind of thing. So I was very familiar with those issues. So there were no surprises in that for me. Of course, we should never not be vigilant, and so I will never say never. I will say I'm very pleased that we've got sharp eyes looking at these issues to bring these forward, because we can never be complacent. So what I've seen myself doesn't suggest that there's anything related to fraud. It looks like people trying to get the job done and cutting corners to do the right thing, but perhaps not taking the time. She pointed out in her report about procurement planning. And that lines up with project planning. And some of us, me included, if we plan better, we will comply. But we can also improve our system and our policy. So we're achieving the outcome that we want to do. I don't know. Again, you see, I've avoided that question a little bit, but
to the best of your knowledge.
it's the my knowledge.
Thank you. Any other questions from committee members? No, that was great, very reassuring. Sangeeta, great report. Thank you very much. In terms of the work that you're doing, it will be hard to have that independent view and then to outline to people the issues found in a particular area and encourage them to do the right thing. So I appreciate that. The recommendation in front of us is that the Risk and Assurance Committee received the report. I'm happy to move. Could I please have a second? By Joanna seconding. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, cool, and that carry. Thank you. We're actually going to skip ahead to item 8.4, which is the policy register update. Thank you for your flexibility, Sandra. Ultimately, have you got any salient comments that we'll take read?
Yeah, it was just the fact that we put in the table that staff believed possibly should come to risk and assurance, but we've put in the full list so that we can add any extras in. It was really just a gut feel of what we think the committee might like to see.
Any questions, comments, team?
Well, several, just around some of the overdues. So that obviously prioritising, like as I scroll down, I highlighted like the sensitive expenditure 2019. What's we're behind and doing? Like there's a few there that we need to do. So I guess have the team got a prioritisation of those ones that are overdue?
Yes, so my plan is to put this on our management group agenda for next month, just to make sure that any of those that have any kind of high risk, I know the team are well aware that the sensitive expenditure policy does need to be updated, and unfortunately with LTP and that kind of our annual reports, and it'll be annual plan, it does keep moving a little bit down the list. But we will be going through all of these next month with the managers, so I'm hoping at our next update we'll be able to give you a better time frame of when these will be completed.
Thank you. And I guess the other thing that sort of bothers me is like we have a voicemail policy, and then should they be standard operating procedures rather than a policy? Like how do we, to understand the nuances of a policy and where a policy is needed and where it's just a standard operating procedure?
Yeah, I can certainly pass that feedback along. I guess it's for some of those more internal things, whether you call them a policy or a plan is probably neither here nor there. I'd say they say the same thing, but we can definitely put that feedback in there.
Yeah, I guess it's where they sit in the framework. We all talk about policies, and it's sort of like a charter and an operations manual. To me, the policies sit in the charter and some of these things sit in an operations manual, but just asking that question.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's great feedback, and one of the reasons why I think it's helpful to have this type of report come to the committee as an overview of what all the policies are that are out there, and making sure that there's transparency on where those policies are going for an approval. And then the other part being that questions like this, asking the question, do we really need a policy on this particular type of thing? While we're
I was just going to say SOPs kind of don't need to be public either, because policies probably are out there in the public domain, I'm guessing, aren't they?
So we have definitely divided it into our external versus internal policies kind of within that list, but I guess we're trying to give you that complete oversight to make sure we've captured everything, but I can definitely talk to the managers about that next month.
And there are a couple of policies in there that I thought should be within the oversight of this particular committee, which is asset management, capitalisation, council vehicles, and there's one called digital strategy, which comes back to the point: is it a strategy, is it a plan, all those different types of things. So I do think if that digital turned into a policy, then that could be here. But if it stays as a strategy, I'll give it a question. Well, yeah, okay, but we're on the same page. So if we can, yes, but only the strategy if it's a policy, not if it's a strategy. Just to be clear.
Strategies and policies.
Sorry, I just ask in regards to vehicles, do you mean purchasing?
Oh, I'm not actually sure it's called council vehicles.
On what that was about.
Yeah, so to me, vehicles or fleet, like if it's, yeah, I don't know what the policy talks about, but if it talks about, well, let's bring it through. Or maybe you could send it to me and then I could let you know whether I think that would be a valuable one to come through. Yeah. Similarly with the digital as well, I'm not quite sure what's contained within that. And there are a couple which were spoken to that are overdue, so but that's already been raised. Oh, Gilda, welcome.
That's outrageous, but I see.
Any more questions for Sandra in relation to this paper? Otherwise, the recommendation in front of us is that the information be received and the committee provided feedback, and that feedback was in relation to adding policies under the view of the Risk and Assurance Committee, and also someone, I guess, on the team, when it goes to that, when it's on the agenda, will determine whether everything that's on there needs to be a policy.
I'm happy to move that.
Yeah, Adrian's moving. I'm seconding. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, Commander Carey. Go. With five. Lovely. So welcome, Anne. We've got item 8.5 on the agenda, which is the annual plan 25-26, timeline and key risk. Okay. Just a quick update in relation to the paper and background, and then open to the committee for questions. Back to you,
Bruce. Bruce.
Oh, I took it away.
Oh,
Sorry. Madam Chair, morning, Kato. So planning for the annual plan and associated fees and charges is well underway, with budgets set to be sent out to managers at the end of the month. A separate but related piece of work looking at the whole process of developing the long-term plan and looking at how we can improve that process is also taking place. So anything that comes out of that will be integrated into the annual plan timeline. We've developed the risk register. Since the committee received the report, an additional risk has been added to the register regarding rates for evaluations. Currently some delay in finalising these, so this has been added to the register and there's a watching brief on that.
questions, committee members?
Gifts that keeps on giving, isn't it?
Just keep on going. Just keep on going.
Okay, about being an accountant.
While further questions may be coming, can you just remind me of what's significant and what's material, and how is that determined? So which determines what approach is taken?
Or when we go out
for
consultation.
Yeah. And then I'm also quite keen to understand with the
So in terms of what's significant or material, staff go through a significance and engagement policy and do an assessment against that. Generally, it's pretty clear cut whether it's significant or material. If we ever have a concern, we would raise the question with audit. And if we ever have a very large concern, we would get our own legal opinion as to whether it was significant or material.
I did actually, yeah, I did receive the email with that, but I just wanted to hear it here. So thank you. And then I'm quite keen to understand what the role is envisaged for the Risk and Assurance Committee post this particular meeting in relation to this particular process. Thanks.
I would definitely like to get the committee's feel for this. So I guess when the Risk and Assurance Committee was set up, it was kind of set up for the making sure that the project plan is dealt with and that the risks are dealt with, and anything in terms of improvement, rather than seeing the actual annual plan or annual report document itself. We're open to what the committee would like to do for that, but just recognising timing wise, usually we have the Risk and Assurance Committee the day before council, because that's how it works getting through the audit process. So whether the committee feels that there's value seeing that actual document, or would you prefer to be involved from the risk analysis at the start and I guess the improvements and what we're working on going forward?
Any responses, team? We've been asked a question. But I will say that it is hard to add value receiving something the day prior to it being needing approval.
Yeah.
Because it's in my view a little bit too late to have any deal breakers addressed.
I agree. It would be very hard to make a comment and then expect that it might change before it hits in front of the council with any well, there might be value in the question it may raise, but it's about all. It's harder to do it. If you're here, you probably could, but we'll leave that in there.
Yeah, and I guess the challenge around that is timing, isn't it? And our process of setting these dates and cut-off points, and when it is an external factor, isn't it, with audit, and on reflection over the past few years, there has been a drawing out of the timeframes, hasn't there? So I guess we need to be realistic with that, because that is the one thing that impacts our timing is audit.
And I guess so audit don't actually audit our annual plan unless there's a significant and material difference. So that would probably be the exception. We probably could get the annual plan to you in a somewhat more, and I'm thinking the week before rather than the day before, but definitely for the long-term plan and the annual report, that's absolutely the case.
I think from my perspective, to the extent that the timeline allows, I think that this Risk and Assurance Committee can try and add value the best that it can. But I don't think, based on the timeline, it needs to be a deal breaker, if that makes any sense. So that's a bit of a placeholder comment, but it really does depend how the process is going and whether there is actually time to include the committee in it. And I'm speaking on behalf of the committee, and I don't see the harm in it coming through the committee for feedback. Well, nobody had an allergic reaction to that, so challenge accepted.
Maybe just if something is deemed to be in that grey area or in the recognised in the policy that it's significant, maybe those could come earlier. Only we don't have to worry about the rest of them earlier.
Yeah, because when you think about it from the council perspective, the only difference is by Joanne and I and the view that we might have on that. Yeah. Because you guys will timing it. Yeah. Yeah. If we start making those decisions pretty much all the time anyway. Yeah. We occasionally get something come that we would recommend would be significant, but normally it's an operations thing and we completely trust what they're doing. Fair enough.
Yeah, so we'll try and schedule the meeting a week ahead of time, if at all possible, noting that audit timeframes might change.
Yeah, yeah. And from a committee member's perspective, we'll be as flexible as we can, knowing that those dates may need to shift to accommodate anything else that needs to shift.
Let's do an online meeting at that point.
Is it we?
Are we allowed to? Not standing one?
That's coming, isn't it?
October, I think.
Yeah.
A draft.
Yeah. We're not at that point yet.
Yeah.
Any other question? I did have one in relation to the water services plan and how they may impact this process, but I think that's a big argument.
Thing under attention at the moment. We've got some funding. It's one risk that we're trying to manage. We are working with CoLab to try and do some sort of gap analysis collectively with one of the councils, and at that point we'll have a better idea about the detail of what's been requested and what is new work, if you like. So that's still probably a month or two away until we get clarity.
Okay. And just coming back to your earlier CEO report, what kotahi or NZTA funding is not significant / material?
I don't know, probably not.
Just curious.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's probably a judgment, a bit of a judgment call really. See that triggering.
I don't get the sense that it is, but I just thought I'd ask the question. If there are no other questions, recommendation is that the committee receives the report. I'm happy to move. I'll take a second.
No second.
By Joanne, seconding, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, Commander carry. Thank you. Welcome back, team. We're now on 8.6, which is climate change river map project.
So the climate change river map was developed through a series of council workshops at the end of 2023 and included in the long-term plan. So the river map functions as a way to capture work happening across the organisation to respond to climate risks and build resilience. The river map has 5 work streams, and the project that I'm giving an overview of today is focused on one of these work streams, which is namely the strategy work stream. It has 5 key objectives: growing governance, knowledge and understanding, building organisational knowledge, developing council's vision, objectives and approach so as to develop a climate resilience strategy, growing community resilience, and improving council's ability to plan for and respond to climate risk in an integrated way. The internal staff climate change group forms the project group for this project, and the project has e-team oversight. A risk register has been developed and will be updated as needed. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions from the members? I guess from my perspective, I was trying to understand the appetite of the community paying for the climate resilience work that's needed versus how significant that amount is actually going to be. So if you just comment on that one.
Sure. So there's a couple of things. Firstly, through the development of the climate strategy, we'll be certainly seeking extensive feedback from the community, both through the Te Mana Whenua Forum, through early pre-consultation with interested groups, and then through the normal wider community consultation process. So all of that will give us direction from our community. Leading into that, the plan is to run an external comms campaign out to the community to sort of highlight some of the key issues and choices we have around building resilience to climate risks. And also just to note that we do have a question in our annual customer survey this year around climate change, asking how important is it that council takes a leadership role in responding to climate change. So that's an annual survey, but we get the results quarterly, so we should get the first results from that quite soon. We asked this question back in 2020 as well, at which point 60% of the district said that it was important or very important.
Thank you for that. Any other questions from the committee members? Otherwise, the recommendation is that the committee receives the report. I'm happy to move. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, Commander.
Councillor.
Looks like it's morning tea time. Team. On the agenda, when we come back, we're due to start with 8.6. to help Leslie out in relation to this, the focus of our particular review of this paper is that we come out and say a top 10 risks, which Leslie will then look at the residual risk ratings from the various workshops that have been held. And she will use those residual risk ratings to determine what deep dives need to be prioritised. And then Leslie and I will work together in terms of whether that looks like one per risk and assurance committee meeting or two, depending on the time frame. So Leslie, thank you for coming back, team. I hope you enjoyed your morning tea, and over to you, Leslie. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. So we've been on quite a journey, and so now we're at the point of having to make some decisions around what are the top risks. Kelly's going to bring up the risk register, and so we can go through.
I'll just add something as well. For absence of doubt in relation to this, at the moment we're currently sitting with 13 risks. The objective is to get, hopefully, to 10 that we agree on as being the most critical, whether they be strategic or operational, but critical to the organisation achieving its vision. And then the team will take it from there in terms of utilising the residual risk from previous workshops. Sorry, Kelly, your turn.
I was just going to say, I don't know if we could bring it up. I think you've all got it in front of you. But yeah, so it's just an opportunity for you to give feedback to us. As you can see in front of you, you've got 13 that we've now landed on following an iterative process that we've been through more recently with our elected members. 13 top risks, and then we've got 3 other risks that we've defined as being a little bit more operational, which the executive team will continue to monitor, but they won't necessarily be part of our top risks. So we are now interested to hear from you. Do you see any of those risks perhaps dropping below the top 10, or what do you see as being the most important that you would like to keep up front, top of mind?
Highlight the spreadsheet.
Do you need that to be brought up on the screen, Johnny? The spreadsheet was sent out by Cooljet.
We can bring it up if you like.
It was sent out on the 4th of September at 2:43 p.m.
Just China, pull it out.
And it's got the summary, the top risks, the likelihood of the.
I read it, I just can't.
Okay, maybe we could put those.
And I look at Kevin's, but he can't pick it up either.
Your separate email.
Oh,
You haven't got that from
This
the
is one
email.
This is one on the Monday. There's an Easter.
I've got it. I can share it. I'm just waiting for your remote then.
You didn't receive an email on the 4th of September.
No. I've got the 5th, which was the council workshop. For the 11th.
So an email. There's no emails from Cooljet.
Not on the 4th. Not on the board. No. I didn't know this one existed.
Well, it's just coming out now, team. So, Leslie, any other comments that you might have? While we're waiting for that to happen.
Just got it. Sorry.
Yeah, we can go into the summary one. Yeah.
You can share if you need me to.
Yep.
Email.
Yeah, sure.
There was an email looking out on the 4th of September to the Risk and Assurance Committee on Cooljet.
4th of September.
It'll probably sit under from the first one where she sent the initial agenda.
Because the 4th of September, there's nothing.
Okay, so the trail started on the 3rd, and then there were several emails followed on from there.
So what I suggest we do, so Tamara's brought it up at the moment, if we can make it bigger so that it focuses on those 3 columns, A, D, and C, that would be fantastic. And while we're doing that, could we also have that emailed again to committee members so they can open it on their devices.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
So hot risks you want to go to, or yeah, go to the next column?
Oh, sorry, no, this is the correct one. So this is just the summary.
Summary of them.
And there's 13 there. They're not numbered because we didn't want to put any weighting for them or anything like that. But what you can see is they're ordered in terms of extreme, very high down to high. And we've got the 13 there. So the first one there being not meeting compliance and legislative
On the
requirements.
sixth. Under the sixth, one on the sixth. What?
Right, they're
I want
finding
to
it. They did
usually
receive
on the
it.
sixth. And the fourth is under that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it email trail?
I've just resent it.
So what I want us to do, if that's okay, Kelly, is we focus on that first column because and that first column should include, my understanding, 13 risks that were based on the most recent council workshop determined to be the highest ones. So our objective today is to hopefully move from 13 to 10, and that will give Leslie a way forward in terms of what the most significant ones that we want reporting on at this particular committee. So we have 13, ideally we move to 10. So between us as a committee, trying to understand which ones are in and which ones are out.
So we'll start with the first one, not meeting compliance and legislative requirements.
Yeah, I'm in. Is there anyone that disagrees that that should be included in the top 10?
Well, it's certainly a risk to our business, as it were, but again, that's what we exist for.
So
To do that.
I'll jump ahead a little bit because we've obviously got this list. And if I go to the bottom one that we've rated as high, for failure to strategically consider and plan for the future, shouldn't our not completing compliance and legislative requirements fit under that because of the LTP? So that's where I sort of feel is that one within that one. That's the question I would have, just to try and start breaking it back rather than as if we look at the ones that we've rated very high. That's my question is that one, could it sit under not meeting compliance and legislative requirements because we are required to plan for the future?
The only question I would have is why was there a feeling it should be split? That's the only question I have. I would agree with you, but there may have been something that you found that this is more important.
Yeah.
And then your risks start to increase in capacity. Which is what you're doing.
Yeah, it broadens it.
In terms of strategically consider and plan for the future, the description of that is failing to take a strategic approach to thinking and planning. The consequences of that being failure to meet customer and community expectations, adverse economic and social impacts on the community, significant financial impacts on council, customer residents dissatisfaction, failure to meet strategic goals. So it's about us strategically considering planning for the future. Like you said, that could come under compliance, and we're really keen to get that feedback from you today as to what risks perhaps you might like to see consolidated. So that has been part of that journey. Particularly our elected members said recently we'd like to see a couple consolidated or some moved out. So we did that as an E-team, we reviewed them, we moved 3 to operational, and we're now left with 13 and keen to hear your feedback. So that is absolutely one. As you can see, it's high. We can either drop that down or even merge it as part of legislative compliance. So that's great feedback for us.
I'm happy to consolidate.
Perfect. Great. Down to 12.
And I guess even like to fail to effectively plan for and proactively respond to climate impacts. Is that a legislative lever as well? Just asking. It makes the first one really big. Well, but the legislation is big. So I don't know.
Yeah, I suppose it's a balance between having a very general strategic statement as opposed to
a specific,
focusing on specific risk.
If you were wanting to combine, would that not combine with inadequate response to local level natural disasters, extreme weather events, and pandemics, it almost links with that.
Yes.
I can download it.
Yeah, so 19 are going with 10.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Whichever one it is. Yeah.
The third one could actually potentially go in with effectively plan and proactively respond.
Correct, because that surely comes from the other.
Yeah, I agree.
Because if you don't do one, they sort of go hand in hand, don't
They
they?
certainly do, because if you're not doing that, then
you're going to come up short, or more short than more wanting than we want to be.
That's correct. So we're responding, but we're also so they do well. In my humble opinion, they fit together.
They fit together. Mm.
So it fits together with one. Sorry.
It fits together with the civil defence,
Yeah.
our local inadequate response to local disasters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think my suggestion would be that we ensure that the risk description is expanded to capture those various different elements.
Yeah, they are different in terms of one's the civil defence response planning to prepare to be able to respond, making sure we've got that capacity and that capability. Whereas the other one is, I guess it's different. It's that long-term approach in terms of community and how but they're interlinked.
Yeah, I guess I guess the other way of looking at it is that we're setting going to come up to 10, and those ones will be just in the background, still there as a risk, and maybe that's where we can leave them rather than combine them. Perhaps we just leave it where it is as high, but not in the top 10. So it's still there, but it's not
been identified for regular reporting or specific priority.
Mm. We're probably quite lucky in the sense we don't live on a coastline. That's what minimises this.
We do live under a big mountain.
Yeah.
It's fallen down a couple of times to be fair.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I was just going to say that the other two that I thought would combine would be, because we've got the developing partnerships with iwi, and then we've got failures to communicate and or engage effectively with stakeholders. That could almost be stakeholders including iwi potentially, because it was iwi being one of our key stakeholders.
Yeah, I have a different view.
Okay, that's fair.
Well, we'll talk to that one and then we'll come back to the climate one. So I see, from my perspective, iwi being a higher contractual obligation versus the local government act. So to me, stakeholders comes via the local government act. iwi comes via the local government act plus settlement tax plus Te Tiriti o Waitangi. So that's why I saw them as a separate. And then coming back to the climate one, I actually saw climate different to the local response to whatever it might be, with the reason being, if you're thinking about it from a perspective of a 1.5 increase in temperature, that will have a different impact on many different things in terms of council activities versus just responding to something that might be a weather-related event.
True.
That's why I've seen them different. Yeah. But happy to, this is our opportunity.
I see what you mean with there, but it was just like, I suppose if we didn't, for example, if we weren't proactive in the water space and we have, increased droughts, I mean, that these are weather response, but this is, that's our response to our water strategy for dealing with that. So that's why I kind of felt that was, and that is different to I guess a big flood or a big, or whatever. But there's, that was my take on it.
Yeah. Did you figure out where we landed? Because I don't know that we did.
I think so far we're still down to 12.
Okay.
So in terms of the bottom one, dropping that down.
So I guess the other one is inadequate response to political changes. Like, yes, we've had some changes in policy that have, you bounce around, but is it an extra, is it one of our top 10? Because it doesn't affect us every day. It affects us potentially when there's a change in government.
And I do wonder what the inadequate response, because I mean, again, if we've been deemed to have to do something compliance, isn't it?
We have municipalities that don't give it comes to be, it turns into compliance, surely. I'm guessing.
At the beginning of the new government's reign, is anything to go by, we didn't know what the changes, what changes we'd have to make because they were still sticking in their policy. So I think I would agree that I don't think that is one of the priorities.
Perhaps it could be better worded that it's an adequate response to change to policy, policy or even regional council policy.
Yeah, and that's all part of the. So is that part of compliance and the legislative requirement?
Yeah,
it could. Yeah. Yeah, that's how we react.
Yeah, my view on that one is that is being prepared for what's going to come, whereas the legislative compliance is when it's actually enacted. And there's a lot of work that councils or local government has to do in preparation for whichever way. So it effectively means to me, like for the water services, you wouldn't do any of the Waikato water done well until they put a line in the sand about exactly what it is, and then you'd start to do something. So my worry is thinking about it from a risk perspective. We're supposed to be thinking about what's coming at us in the future and preparing for it. So I can see exactly where the points are coming from. I'm just a little bit concerned that if we drop it off there, then we don't do the horizon scanning for what's coming. We focus on wait till it's enacted and then we'll do something about it.
I think that's why I look at the long-term plan, because part of there would be headings in which we would naturally plan for, and this would come under one of the things about how then do we, in the long-term plan, how then do we look at anything that might change the direction this council has set. So that's where I have. I don't think that we're not responding in a way that would be against what council would want to do.
Do we want to go through one by one? Otherwise we'll just keep.
Yeah, go
yeah,
on.
it's okay.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about legislative compliance. What about inadequate water or wastewater services? So some of the feedback that came from our elected members is there is the potential to combine this one with the essential services. Failure of essential services, assets, infrastructure or systems could be combined with inadequate water or wastewater services. That was debated on the day. There was some conversation around water or wastewater being, pretty much life or death, most essential, and then the other services not as essential. Therefore, they've got different residual ratings, or inherent ratings, sorry. What are your thoughts on that? Where does inadequate water or wastewater services sit? What are our top risks? Would you see it being combined with that other one?
Can we go around the table and do a yes, no as to whether we agree that it's in?
Yeah, combining it with which?
It's number 15.
Failure of essential services, assets, infrastructure or systems.
So my understanding, we've got two options on the table is to have it, so row number 9 being in by itself, or being combined with row number 15, which is failure of essential services, assets, infrastructure or systems. So we'll start first with by itself, if that's okay. Kevin, can we start with you?
I'll combine those two.
Combine?
Yeah.
By itself.
Myself? Fine.
I'm inclined to say standalone because, mind you, I suppose it does, failure of essential services is included in there. So it could be combined.
It could.
But it's critical.
Including water and wastewater, just to add a couple of words.
Well, it's failure of essential services. That's I guess, does it capture it under there or does it sit on its own?
I would say the reason why I wanted it separate is because it's such a topical risk at the moment. And I've got no issue with it in the future being consolidated once we're dedicated the resource and got across that a little bit better. But in my mind, this is going to be one of the most significant risks that are going to impact local government in New Zealand for the next 5 years. And so that's why I'm saying standalone. So we've got two combined, three.
I would have been combined as well, to be honest. But taking Kieran's point about, to identifying them as that. Because it's, I see both sides of that, but I mean, essential is essential.
Yeah.
So we'll leave a question mark on that one, and we'll have to do some work on some of the other ones to see if we can drop. Okay, the next one is the inadequate response to local level natural disasters. I'll start on this one. I'd like that to be separate and included. Yeah, Adrian? We're on row 10.
Yeah, I know. Like it's a critical service that we provide. Again, failure of essential services assets. So but it's something that we must be prepared for, and so it is a risk, because if we're not prepared, then we're going to fail. So
that's your newspaper headline. Yes, that one right there.
Sorry. But just for me, it's what's the role of civil defence, and because we bow to them, I suppose, in that respect, and we expect them to be the overarching.
Yeah, but unfortunately, it's our staff, it's our responsibility here on the ground. Civil defence doesn't do it. It's our.
Yeah, but we do it under the auspices of, as it were. But yeah, sure, our staff have to be ready to rock and roll. We get that. So
it has to plan.
We have to plan. Yeah. But
we're still on legislation. The Civil Defence Authority who have chosen to work at a regional level in some manner. It doesn't. In fact, I think the reports from Gabriella and
anniversary weekend.
Have indicated that in fact push back to the local response capability as opposed to regionalising, which is we're tending.
You can only centralise so far. That's the point.
Yeah.
Different answers with this.
Should I take a different approach? Is there anyone that sees that not being in the top 10? No, okay, we're in. The next one is loss of data in business system.
Can we just ask, Tony, can you just move the screen over? I'm losing those first words, please. I won't. Okay, fine. Sorry. Okay.
So Joanne, it's the one that we're looking at is loss of data in business systems.
That is critical to our functioning. If we don't have our information and data, it's like at a civil defence and we lose our power, and having the information that you need, it is critical.
Does anyone think that it shouldn't be in a top 10? No. Which is inadequate financial management. Does anyone think that it should not be in our top 10?
Well, we don't want to credit rating.
I don't see anyone wanting to not have that in there. My comment on this one would be, I'd like to see it not being financial management, but financial strategy.
And could that link with poor leadership? And because we've put here, suggest it could apply to governance and the exec team. So is that where there's a
business everything?
And it includes financial management.
It includes that, yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll come to that one.
Yeah.
The next one is health and safety. Failure to provide a safe and healthy workplace. So anyone see that not in the top 10? I think I'll be alone on this one. I don't see that in the top 10. But
it should be business as usual, shouldn't it? It should be business as usual. Because it's not specific to the local government in the sense that if you compare it to other things and the services we provide, the health and safety is part of the Employment Act.
Yeah, I saw it sitting under not meeting compliance and legislative requirements, which is to be a fair and reasonable employer.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So,
Where did you see them?
sitting under the first one, not meeting compliance and legislative requirements, to be a fair and reasonable employer.
Although in terms of culture, I suppose, you want to go outside comply, in terms of creating that's as safe and healthy, where it was, but it's the culture is another step up on compliance. Hey, we're doing what we have to do, but our people still aren't happy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So
I didn't see it in the top 10, I just see it in the top of the operational risks, which I thought that the E team would be managing really closely on a very tight basis, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I agree.
Can go on to the next one. Okay. The next one is failure to develop and maintain partnerships with mana whenua, iwi, hapu and Māori. I think I've already spoken, I see it in there, but anyone else?
Still saw it in there. Yeah, but it was just with
Sorry,
stakeholders, but with the addition of iwi to that statement, that's so.
I agree with you.
Any other comments in terms of, so I think the question that's being put is, do we see it separate to the one further down at number 17, which is failure to communicate and or engage effectively with stakeholders, or do we see it separate? Separate.
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 Yeah, I was combined, but with the, making sure that it was identified in there. The risk of that one, failing that one, much higher than going to communicate with other stakeholders. I think it's still a risk right up that board, but yeah, I'm not belittling what we have to do, but it's just how we structure this because of the number of acts and policies and things that are actually national government mandated rather than anything else. Yeah, which I would secret.
Well, I think it's secret because I think the understanding of mana whenua and its influence is quite different from iwi, hapu and Māori understanding the differences of those three. The other thing is that, national government is about to be tested on their support of the bill that Act is putting through. And the tension, which possibly you feel, but certainly we feel, it's going to explode if that bill goes through. There is so much that is hinging on this. We're not just stakeholders, and we're not going anywhere. That's why I feel that this is a separate. It's separate because there is so much involved in the future for us developing with the numbers of people that you see, and if King Suhaite is coming to anything, but Tautas did it as well. These movements of like the Rātana movement has 60,000 followers. People saying, who are they? We live happily in this world, but it's almost this river that runs right beneath everybody, and that's what that signals to me.
So you say you should be happy to discuss it and put your point of view across it. That's what I'm getting, where I come from. I don't necessarily agree with the bill, right? But I believe there's room for it to be discussed.
Always happy to discuss it, always.
Let's discuss that later. It's an important corridor, don't get me wrong. I think we landed on kind of like a stalemate there, so we'll move on to the next one, which is failure of essential services. I think we're keeping that separate. two waters, right? That's my
That
understanding.
was combining the water.
We're still that debate around combining and.
Okay, sorry, we're still in a stalemate of that one. Yes, anything. The next one is poor leadership, in or out. I see it out. Out of the top, you know, because it's an inherent thing of what we would do as an organisation. Daily. The next one, inadequate response to political changes. I think we discussed that, Kelly. Did you get guidance? You happy with that? Sorry that I'm not looking at you, Leslie. Kelly's directly opposite me, so he's in the hot seat. Are you comfortable with that one, Kelly?
Yes, I think we've got to be keeping it in.
Okay. And climate, my understanding is in.
Are you laughing?
It's not just about the climate though, is it? It's the whole gamut of.
I just wish it was called something else.
Yes, yeah.
In some ways, I mean, I almost look at that kind of stuff. I mean, continual improvement.
Yeah.
You know, if we thought there was a disaster, it's a bit like these councils that voted that it was a climate emergency. Well, you should then put your car keys, you know, in the walk-up, you know, that's the case. But if we can acknowledge that there's a continuous improvement of everything that we do, and if you look at some behaviours of even 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago compared to what it is now, and you know, so it's that's a bit that concerns me. I suppose it's a bit. We need to actually effectively plan to respond and do all that kind of stuff, but we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater as well. Just trying to how do we get to that point?
And we've talked about planning as well. Kelly, do we have a 10? And your son?
I'm at 11. So what I've got is health and safety and leadership. We dropped to operational, and then we're at stalemate with a couple of them being water and the essential services one, and then stakeholders and partnerships. TV. Is that right?
Water and wastewater and essential service. Oh, so
Yeah, and that's where it sits. Yeah, you could actually say. I guess I put it in a higher hierarchy because of the political space it's in at the moment and where that's going.
there'll always be hierarchy in all of those.
Yeah.
It's not covering one thing.
And if you went and asked Joe Ratepayer on the street, he said, what are our essential services? But
Yeah. Water and wastewater be
they'd be right up
Yeah.
the top.
So
Right.
it's chucked in.
Me,
just my
also. For me, I am more likely to combine this one than I am with the EV and stakeholders. However, discussions on our marae and our iwi is the importance of water, the wairua of water. And so my vote will be to leave it as one of the things. But like I said, I'm more likely to give on that one.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, the plan for the future, because we talked about combining that one. So if we're combining that one, then yes, we're at 10. So we don't need to worry about combining the
In
other
the
ones.
plan for the future, we're combining with.
Well, we talked about legislative compliance, or we could also drop it as an operational one to.
But it's still strategic.
So effectively what we've done is we've dropped health and safety, leadership and plan for the future might go somewhere else. That would get us to 10, leaving all the rest of them separate.
Yeah.
Water, yeah, central services, stakeholders, partnerships, leaving them separate.
Because from the reporting perspective, we're, you know, even if we did combine them, we're still going to get, so if we combine essential services and water, we're still going to get the reporting on those as we would. So how about we take it and run with it for now, and then as we progress, we can potentially find some ways of consolidating or shackling moving forward.
So we can't go to 9.
Yeah.
Just not doing something because there's a number. It's like, well,
Yeah, well, fair point. I just thought we'd struggle to get from 13 to 10, so that's why that was a.
Yeah, I was thinking the same.
Yeah.
We've got one risk.
So what I'm hearing then is that we would consolidate water and essential services with the focus on the essential services in the short term being on water until that
So it's got something else.
progresses, and then we get a new focus, and then we're at 9. Oh,
Cool,
look at you overachievers.
Fortunately, we'd already discussed these and to get it down to rankings at this point. So, and it was a really good exercise, I'd have to say, with what we did. And really want to highlight to Jodie the work that went on with the activity we did in this council chambers where everybody participated. You know, when you sit around the room, not everybody participates, but when you're in your groups and you move around, everybody participates. That was a very good exercise.
Awesome. Good, mate. Looks like we've landed top 9. I will say in relation to the health and safety, it is from a governance perspective something that we need to keep our eye on in relation to. That's something that's specific to our staff members. So I don't want staff members to think that it's not a priority. So I do see that we will get health and safety reporting continue to come in this space. So I just wanted, that's one of the things in terms of our bond with our staff members.
Yeah, that's really good.
Are you satisfied with what you had?
Absolutely, that's perfect. We've got 9. And I think at the start of this, you just gave us the direction that those with the highest residual risk are the ones that you want us to delve deeply, or you'll confirm it please let eliminate.
Yeah, I'm happy with that approach. So because that's been workshopped, right? Both with risk and assurance committee members as well as elected members. Yeah, and so to me, if it's already been done, let's not recreate the wheel. Let's go with that. And I'm happy to work in between this meeting and the next one with Leslie on what that looks like. So committee members, if data, I think, has got an extreme residual risk, so that would probably be the first one that we would have a deep dive into, because that's got the most extreme risk after all the controls that we have in place.
And probably the only thing I'd add is because the failure of essential services as assets and infrastructure we rated very high, because we're putting the waters in there, that would have to go up to extreme.
Okay, well, the recommendation in front of us is that okay. Sorry, my apologies, team. Information is received, feedback provided on top 10 risks, which will be top 9 risks, and confirmation of the risk to be reviewed at meetings, which Leslie and I will take offline and do that. If you take my happy to move, so please do a second there. Majority of the all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, Kumana, carry. I understand that we have Audit New Zealand online. And so that would mean that we're moving to item 8.7 on the agenda, which is the 23-24 annual report, project update and interim management report. So 8.17. Welcome, thank you. We can just have a brief update and then we'll move into questions from the committee. Kia ora.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora koutou. We're just here to present the annual report. The interim audit was completed through early April this year, and the final one is currently underway from the 2nd of September to the 4th of October. And yeah, we're just here to present the findings from that. And
any other questions? I'll start with, so from my perspective, I saw a lot of significant movements in the P&L, and sorry to use old school language, but in the balance sheet. And so my concern was what that meant for our future years in our LTP if it was having significant shifts in a negative way, which meant we had less money to do future projects. If you could comment on that, Nadia, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks for that question. Yes, we're certainly trying to address those issues that we've seen as part of the LTP. For example, we've increased fees and charges in areas where we can to help offset some of those increasing costs. We've reduced our resilience on heated water rates. We've budgeted for some of those increasing costs that we know about, and we've got additional funding from rates for those areas. Yeah, we've tried to address what we can in the LTP.
I also ask, with the affordability focus of the LTP, can you just clarify for me that we're not expecting to see measures not met as a result of that. So as an example, we don't have enough resource to ensure that we achieve those particular measures. And I'm not saying that we don't, I just want to hear it.
Are you talking financial measures or our performance? Performance measures. So I guess council's direction is generally to maintain that level of service. You will see quite a few measures within our current annual report that have been not achieved, but it's by sort of one complaint or you know, a few percentage in terms of the satisfaction survey, but then you look at the neithers and there's 20%. So I wouldn't say that we were looking at a significant shift.
Thank you. And lead on or supplementary question to that. And so when's the next chance that we get to review those measures?
So we just recently reviewed them as part of our long-term plan. So this will be our last annual report on the 2021. So we've taken the opportunity to refine a lot of those.
Yeah. Thank you. I didn't know. I just wanted to. Thank you very much. Yeah. And then I've also asked questions offline as well, so I've got the responses to that, which I appreciate. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'm going to move to the recommendation. And then
I was just first a little bit concerned about this other revenue being like quite high difference. But I mean, you read it later on, it's infrastructural assets and land invested in council. I just wondered if maybe that heading could be changed to from other revenue to something that actually explains something. Because I was really concerned until I read further down. That's a huge bucket to just throw things into called other revenue.
I mean, possibly we could add a new category in the income statement on its own. Yeah. Because it is quite a significant number, so we warrant it. Yeah, that's a good comment.
And thank you for confirming it wasn't a particular standard that required us to call it other revenue and nothing else. Yeah, thank you.
It's broken out later on.
Sorry, just wondering if you wanted to, before you move to the recommendation, invite Claudia or Renee to comment on any of the stuff behind this.
Yeah, we'll just jogging.
Just a question. One of you said the council has incurred significant unplanned overruns in the operating costs compared to the budget for 23-24. And you name them as through waters and roading and consents and licensing. If we're staying on track of what we're doing, then does that statement change? Or are we going to still incur significant unplanned?
I guess in the LTP we've tried to address those costs always budgeted, like where we know the costs have increased, we've budgeted for those and then have provided a funding source. We'll try and match that.
I think we have Renee and Claudia online from Audit New Zealand. Do you have any comment, ladies?
Good morning, everyone. Yes, I've got 2 points just on my list that I just wanted to touch on. The first is just to also acknowledge the interim report that we've done. In terms of our interim audit visits, during that time we focus on the systems and the control environment. I see everything is summarized in your pack, so I'll take that as read. Just wanted to ask if there's any questions. I can maybe just note that we had no new findings during the interim audit. We do have, in terms of our previous findings, 1 we were able to close, 6 remain open, and there are 16 that the audit team plan to follow up during the final audit. This will be detailed in your final report to council when we finished the audit. So happy to take that interim report part as read, and just if there's any questions.
No, it doesn't look like there are any questions, but it's good to get your confirmation, Renee, around there aren't any new issues coming through. But then also, I guess, work for us as a team in terms of if we've got recurring recommendations or recommendations that haven't been closed. I guess, do we have the resources to close out those recommendations? Sorry. You knew it was coming.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we plan to fit that into our schedule, but I mean, things come up at times that we just, you've got to focus on priorities. So sometimes they drop off, despite our best intentions.
Yeah. think Manaia had mentioned previously that, because I've made a comment that often when it comes to auditing of things, it feels like we're going up to get it all done and then we relax, and it feels like we've got peaks and troughs. And he made a comment in relation to things that the team are doing to kind of smooth those peaks out, to get in front of things a bit quicker. I'm looking forward to that happening and to make it an easier process, not only for our team, but for the audit.
The other major variance was current assets, which are 23 million higher than what we budgeted. Are we holding cash assets for a reason?
Yes, we have our liability management policy allows us to pre-fund debt. So we've got it was about 12.5 million of debt coming up that's due to mature in the July, September, April. So we've pre-funded that in advance. So we've got investments that sort of offset that. Yeah. Very much.
If there aren't any further questions, the recommendations in front of us is that the update on the annual report and the draft annual report is received.
Sorry,
Sorry, Renee.
I don't know if you want to just have a very quick audit progress update and timeline update in this point, or if we leave it for 8.9.
Let's go. Yep, over to you.
Okay, so audit teams currently on site. You would see them. You will see them around in the halls. The main area of focus is to first complete that fair value assessment over the land and buildings and infrastructure. Balance is first because that's our highest risk area. The preparation of that work is fairly close to being complete, and then Claudia and myself will commence our reviews. The rest of all the final audit work is also kicked off. In terms of our audit timeline, that's where we have a little bit of unfortunate news this morning to share with you. Our planned timeline allowed us to be finished with the audit and sign the audit opinion on the 30th of October. So unfortunately, we were notified that our audit team is being redeployed towards some government audits. So our team is still on site this week and next week. We will get as much done as possible, but after next week, we will have to take a pause. We are working through a new timeline and we'll work. This is very, very recent news. We only got confirmation this morning early. So I wanted to share it with you so that there's no surprises. But we still need to work through a plan to get our team back. This will mean that we will not be able to finish the audit in time for the 30 October council meeting. We will have to look at one of the next meetings. And we do have our statutory date only at the end of December. That is why our audit was picked for, to use the resources from this audit to one of the other government audits. It's because we've got a little bit of time before our statutory deadline. Yes, so I apologize for the change so late in this project. It's frustrating for us at our level, but there is a bigger picture and a greater good behind these shuffles.
Thanks for the update, Renee. Lania, what does that mean for our team?
We will carry on as though we want it out of the way as soon as we can. So we'll carry on and do all the work that is required up until the team leave. I guess if there's a silver lining, it will give us a bit more time to reflect on that annual plan budgets. We're trying to reimagine our LTP process, so it'll give us a little bit more time in that space. So we'll look for the positives, I guess.
I really like the positive comments. I wrote down greater good from Renee and silver lining from Lania, saying, well done, team. Very positives for me.
Yeah, always brings frustration. I presume there are other councils that are also affected by this move to auditors going down to the government book.
Yes.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's appreciate it's out of your control, Renee, and our team just have to grit and bear it and shuffle work programs.
Thank you very much.
May has promised, Madam Chair, that the same team will be coming back. That would be good.
Like, how did she?
And who's glad on the phone is
I think Renee will do her best to ensure that she has continuity of team members, which we all know can be quite disruptive.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. So the recommendation in front of us is that the update on the annual report and summary draft annual report is received, that the interim audit management report is received, and any feedback. There wasn't any. I don't think there was any feedback that needs to be mentioned.
I guess the only tension that I would have is that for the current financial year, we don't want to keep these trends of unplanned things. That's the risk. So it's really keeping attention on spending on those budgets. And if they're not going to be met, they need to be brought to council to understand, rather than us just go along and get to the each report and find that the number's getting bigger. So I guess it's quite important that we have our eyes on that.
Okay. And so what I heard from that in terms of feedback is that if our starting position changes as a result of things that have happened, that is reported to council as soon as possible. Yeah, fine. So I'm happy to move that recommendation. Can I please have a seconder? Adrian seconding. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, or no, carry. Thank you. The next item is 8.8, which is the LTP audit report. Anyone want to make? Welcome. You want to make a few comments and then we'll move to questions or comments from the committee and maybe already done first. Oh, sorry, I was thinking you were doing this. Oh, sorry.
It's a little
Good, Madam Chair, good everyone. So this report is to present the audit report for the long-term plan 24 to 34 and to the Risk and Assurance Committee. So this follows presentation to the committee at your last TUI of the draft audit report. The audit report and the consultation document. And so an unmodified audit opinion was issued, and there was 2 emphasis of matter paragraphs noted. That was the capital program delivery and the proposed unbalanced budget. The report notes council was receptive to the matters raised in the previous audit document on the consultation document, and this resulted in improved quality for the in the LTP. And the report contains an update on the recommendations and progress made in addressing them. So we're happy to answer any questions, and yeah, just the recommendation is in the report. There isn't.
Thanks for calling you the wrong there. I have it all the time, so it's any questions or comments from the committee? Thank you.
I just think the question probably more for Renee more than anything is around councils that don't audit, where beforehand, and where we do follow that process. Does it make it easier for audit to do it like we do when others go out with their long-term plan and then they're faced with auditing afterwards? Like, it's just these processes are not consistent with councils, but we do follow quite a rigid process for audit. So happy to whoever can answer that question for me, because I just really want to get my head around when you hear other councils going out, don't audit at certain times. Are they taking greater risks than what we are?
They're definitely taking greater risks. So it was only this one year that we had that, or that councils had the choice to not audit the CDs. So from next year onwards, it will be business as usual. And I think the process for us worked. I think for your team and our team worked really well. The bulk of the work went into the CD portion of the audit. The other teams in the other councils where they changed that decision, they still had to do that work, but it was much more pressured right at the end. And, there were obviously things that were falling over quite late in the process. So the process we run was pretty good.
Thanks, Renee. Yeah, because that's assurance for me as a council to understand councils chose to do. Thank you.
Just FYI, I had a quick chat with Renee yesterday. I was trying to understand where there was a comment around DIA and us following a renewal process. So she confirmed that that particular recommendation was not unique to Matamata-Piako District Council. So it's good to get that confirmation. I'm quite keen on page 139. There are some disclosure deficiencies that are listed there. Just quite keen on a comment from our team in relation to some of them. I felt maybe if we had more resource, those comments wouldn't have been made. So the disclosure deficiencies, the corrected misstatements.
Yeah, I guess some of those, so we're talking about things like in the assumptions, NZTA assumptions and the flow on effect. So that's something that's sort of come towards the end of the audit. So it was sort of a timing issue that when we dealt with that. Yeah, I guess.
Is it similar to comments for the financial statements as well? Because it talks about the cash flow statement being updated, borrowings and receivables updated, disclosures, and
so I guess with the cash flow statement, that was we'd calculated the cash flow statement in one way, and audit had a different way of calculating it. So we've gone with their calculation, which was probably more precise than ours. So I mean, these were the changes that were made in the final draft. Again, things would have picked up or that we picked up.
Thank you for that clarity. I was trying to understand whether we could have prevented that, whether it was not a meeting of minds or whether we needed more resource to get across that sooner so it didn't end up there. But you've given clarity on that, so I appreciate it. Sorry.
Pulling a Leone card out of the hat here. On page 15, my understanding is that all councils are likely to be reflecting the same era, i.e. it is not something we have chosen not to correct. It's a double negative. Just take the knots out. It is something we have chosen to correct. I think is what it means. Is that what it means?
No, we haven't corrected the error.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, we didn't have a choice. Did we want to correct it or not? It was, so it's probably something Renee can explain.
Or something we have chosen not to correct.
We didn't have a choice to correct it, I guess, at the late stage. Yeah.
Just double negatives.
That's my bad English, sorry.
It's uncorrected. Yeah. But Renee or Claudia, did you want to comment on that? We're on page 15 of your report.
Claudia, do you want to jump in with that?
Yes, this was a bit of a strange one. We did receive guidance towards the end, which indicated perhaps the number reflected in your financial statements was not quite the number it needed to be. Changing financial statements does take a lot of time, and getting to the number that it should be can also take a lot of time and effort involved, given it changes a whole lot of line items within your financial statements. And that's why we agreed to just estimate an amount and reflect it within the representation letter that you signed off at the end of the LTP audit.
Yeah, real. We'll just move on.
I think that I term that. I don't mean this disrespectfully. Sometimes you get to audit fatigue at the end of something, and you're just like, okay, that's fine. All right.
Estimating things in a financial sense is just like
But I don't want to open the can of worms here. I just want to mention the increased audit fee as a result of this. So I'm just hoping that we've got our lessons learned in place in terms of whether around these times there's an additional resource that's needed or something that we just need to keep that in mind for future processes. Hopefully it won't be like that again. yeah, if you want to comment on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I guess the LTP team are working on a project to sort of keep the LTP as a live document. So we're already talking about when we go annual plan budgets this year, we'll be asking people to look at sort of a 10-year impact, and so we can sort of keep council up to date on what the 10-year picture is looking like, so that we're not coming to you and you know, with the first draft of the LTP and it's a huge surprise for you.
Living documents.
Yeah.
Not always a nice surprise.
No, it's never a nice surprise.
Yeah, I think resounding cordial is no surprises approach sounds great. Unless there are any other comments, and I'm guessing there are none from Audit New Zealand, I'm going to move to the recommendation. Okay, and which is the information is received, I'm happy to move, but please have a second. Yeah, seconding, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, next item is 8.9, which is the review of accounting matters in relation to the 23-24 statement. I think everyone's been looking forward to this one. Yeah.
I'm pleased. So actually the item that was listed in your schedule of things to look at was talking just about accounting policies. But I kind of figured for this audience, our accounting policies are, and we use the model financial statements put out by Audit New Zealand for local government. We don't have the same tax incentives to look at, you know, for our accounting policies. So there's not probably not a lot in the accounting policies that we can play with, to be fair. So I thought a better idea would bring through these are sort of issues that either the auditors have raised in their audit plan, or the things that our accounting team have applied judgment to, and or the management team have applied judgment to. So yeah, so the list of matters there. So if you've got any questions on that.
That's for Kevin. I don't know if you got a question from last time or a question on this one.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I'll start with the one for me, the concerning one for me in relation to this is the revaluations and the impact that that has on either it does or does not need to be revalued, and having the availability of a valuer to actually do it in the time frame that we need to meet. So could you comment on that? Because it mentions in the paper that we're sitting at about 42 million. Audit New Zealand's materiality is about 79 million. But we don't know yet whether that will tip the materiality threshold and require a valuer.
So ideally this fair value work would have been done now, to be fair. I think that was the plan originally, that we feed that information to audit and May was supposed to be done, but yeah, there's problem with some of that work. So but audit are looking at it now. I guess with the numbers we've come out with, we feel reasonably comfortable with that, and it's sort of backed up by contract rate information that's fed into the exercise, and we also reflect on capital goods price index information that comes from Stats New Zealand. So I'm reasonably confident with the information that's coming through, but their work, and it's the final tick in that area. Our backup plan was always to go rolling revaluations at the simplest for us to get through. So that was our backup plan if they didn't agree. And I guess now that we've got this little bit of a delay on the audit, it might work in our favour if things didn't turn out to plan.
Any other comments? I will say that I did like that we had talked about the Waikato regional report and the share value and how it was consistent with others. Again, a bit more assurance that we're on the same pathway as it. It's not always a good thing, but in this particular instance, I thought it was good. Any other comments? Otherwise, I'm going to move this. I like the changes, by the way. I think the approach that you took is good in terms of this give us more transparency of things that are relevant to the financial statements that are going through. I think you've bamboozled us all. The recommendation is that the information be received. I'm happy to move. No, please have a second. By Joanna seconding, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carry. Thank you. The next item is 7.4, which is the legislative compliance framework. Okay. Good morning, Steve.
And we can start by letting you know that Ellie Van Kuyt is online. She's been able to come into the meeting. I'm Ellie's manager, but I'm also just here to support Ellie if needed.
So maybe you want to make a few comments and then we'll open it up to questions.
Yeah, would you like me to start with the questions that you identified?
Yeah, maybe unpack those in part of your intro, if that'd be great. Thanks.
Perfect. Cool. So with our legislative compliance framework, this has gone through staff. As you will note in the attachment, there are sometimes multiple staff outlined in 4 different pieces of legislation. It might not always just be the planning manager. It could be the planning manager with the iwi manager, because it is about a settlement-based act. So they have different requirements within the act. We don't specify or extract those out individually. We do an overarching, and they are responsible for identifying where they need to be compliant and maintain their compliance for their section or for their team. And then one of the big things was about identifying where new legislation might come in and how we maintain that. There is a number of different areas. So there are email subscriptions from government bodies, including professional bodies. And LexisNexis allows me to get updates on changes to legislation that I subscribe to. And we've also had, this is something that Ali identified, we've had Matthew in our team, in the comms team. He has, part of his role is to help identify where it's important for staff. Like, he's been helping with the 3 order changeover and those new acts, so he helps assist in certain areas. And then E-team, Ali identified to me that they have started recording legislation changes that impact us in their weekly agenda. So they, and that is E-team members, bring that into those meetings to identify that. And then I'll just carry on going through. So you questioned about updating policies to reflect legislation. So this is partially if you're talking about HR related policies or local government act policies.
I think in that particular case, I could see that we had started to update our register for the Privacy Act, but we were updating it now that the Privacy Act changed in 2020. So that's what I was trying to understand, what the disconnect was, or if there was one, or whether it was a resourcing thing or something else.
Yeah, so for that one, a lot of the changes, there were huge changes in the Privacy Act to what council had to abide by. Our responsibilities often stayed the same. So what ended up happening was just the date of the act changed and the sections, the corresponding sections all changed, but the responsibilities that we have mostly maintained the same. It was just a bit of an oversight that staff responsible would have read and gone, great, yeah, but the powers that we had or requirements we had to meet were consistent. And when it comes to policies, so the staff, let's say in our policy team across the road, they will maintain and keep an eye on changes that might happen to the alcohol licensing. And they will then have to take that through council to make any changes for those statutory body ones that we have to have policies for. And then internal ones, we tend to have HR who will make the changes as required and go through the internal process. So I've got 2 different ones there.
And I think that'll tie quite nicely into what we talked about earlier from Sandra about that policy register. So we'll be able to get eyes across that organisation.
And you asked about risk assessments and understanding priority risk areas and where to focus resources. We don't tend to undertake this at an organisation level, but it could be something that GMs tend to look at.
Yeah. So for context on that one, I'd ask the question of across all of the legislation that we need to comply with, have we looked at those pieces of legislation, identified which are more important than others? Well, you know, a breach is a breach, don't get me wrong, but I was trying to understand it. Do we look at it from that view to understand where we divert our resources to so that we're focusing on areas that create most risk to the organisation? So that was the background to the question.
Yeah, and to follow on from that, you also asked about how we identify what those higher risk ones are, and there actually is a number of factors we probably need to look at. One would be, is a court process the likely outcome where we could get fined under the Public Health and Safety at Work Act? That is a huge one. We can't insure ourselves against the penalty. So if we got, let's say, a $200,000 fine, that is coming straight from our budget and it's not coming from insurance. So that would be a risk and is a big one for us. But then if you're looking at other ones, public perception can be equally as large. So it depends on what scale you want to look at. If the public are going to, it's going to be front news because we've not agreed or haven't maintained the requirements of the Employment Relations Act and we've gone to the tribunal, that can look publicly not that great, although the impact through the tribunal might not be as great as the Health and Safety at Work Act.
Okay, thank you. What we might do is we might see if the committee members have got any questions in relation to the legislative compliance framework, because we're being asked to receive, not only receive it, but also provide comment on the warrant of fitness. So. Yeah. Because they're in there. So I'll start with a lot of respect because there's a lot of information that you guys need to keep on top of to keep the organisation safe. So thank you for doing that. I'll ask a question which I wasn't quite sure of. So I was trying to differentiate what sits in the legislative compliance framework and where thank you for that whole thing. Resource consents tracking fits in. So do we, Don, we are talking about a quarterly report that's going to come through. Well, is that seen as being part of this framework, or is that something separate?
Well, I think what we're talking about here is more acts of parliament that feels that we're in consents are an output or an outcome from the RMA.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear so we knew if there is a breach of a particular consent, where that would get reported. Would we expect to see it part of here, or we expect to see it separately? Separate thing. So thank you for confirming that. And then I had a query in relation to the director of Kodiak Consulting and whether that had an impact on us.
Yes. So the good news is council didn't have any liability in that situation, and we did actually get a small monetary payout. So what they did is he was charged, or by the courts, about 83,000 was the contribution the man involved could provide, and that was split throughout all the councils that requested compensation on a pro rata basis. So we had about 7 consents that were impacted, so we got about $500-ish from that. Yeah. Compared to Taupo, who had, I think, roughly 1,000 consents, they would have been significantly more. So no, we do still have staff as well on that going through consents, historic ones, to make sure there are no outstanding ones, and that's a slow process that we're still dealing with.
I'll keep going with my questions until some come up. So when I read the areas where there is non-compliance, I didn't get a sense of what the risk to the council was. And so that's just a comment for future. I don't need to know the risk of every single one now, but if we could keep that in mind so that when it is reported that there is a particular breach, of what that could mean for us. Yeah. And then the other thing that I didn't quite have an understanding of is if there is a particular breach and it does result in a fine or a penalty or a sanction, is is this warrant fitness where we will find that information, or does it go elsewhere? Does it get reported elsewhere?
So yes, we would find it in here if it was large. For example, the 3 waters, I believe in there we note that there was a non-compliance. It went through regional, the district court or things like that. But that would be for large ones. Given that this is a yearly update, it won't include the smaller things that happen, but it will include the big idea or larger ones like district court action and things like that.
Thank you. And I guess an earlier comment that I made to Manaya is I would probably go with a holding statement like, to the best of our knowledge, we don't, or we do comply. So that if it was ever looked into, that we've got that holding statement right there as a starting. Yeah, because it's up to an external body to talk about the components. I did have some few in relation to, I think I've shared those ones that for an example for the team on the attachment page 2 on the Employment Relations Act 2000, I was saying in terms of upheld EGs, where would they get reported? So I was just trying to get a little bit more information. Other than that, I also recommended that there is other literature out there that can give us a sense of the maturity of our legislative compliance framework. And so hopefully we can see some of those things start to be reflected in the framework moving forward. Okay.
Sorry, I was going to answer that one if you'd like me to regarding personal grievances, where they are reported. So in our annual report, we need to disclose any severance payments. However, just I guess what might be helpful for the committee is just to have an understanding of some of the work that the executive team are doing. So one of our strategic priorities that we've identified for the next year is legislative compliance. And what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to get more information on a regular basis. So we're getting reporting and that assurance ourselves as to that we're actually complying with this legislation rather than just this one-off process that we're doing. It's a great process as well, but we're actually wanting to delve more deeply into that as an executive. So there might be an opportunity for us to report back on that as well and to give more regular updates, particularly if there's any non-compliance and other areas of concern as well.
So would there be a table listing all those? Well, you know, what I say that, you know, is how many times do you think we non-comply in a given year?
Good question. I don't really know that offhand. As Don referred to earlier, there'll be a compliance report related to water and wastewater. That's probably slightly different in terms of other legislation.
There are always ones that we are non-compliant with, which are slightly more simplified, such as the Public Records Keeping Act. For that one, we are non-compliant. But the reason we put in the report majority compliant or in the schedule is because the Act itself requires that there's humidity control, temperature control of our records, and we have boxes out in offices that aren't in storage, and the Act requires 100% to be in those. So I actually got from Joe that we spend around $2,500 a month currently for the roughly 1,700 boxes that we have of documents in off-site storage, but it's the ones that we have here that don't meet that standard, and it would just be a cost. So there are always ones, and then what we would identify is there are lots of different mechanisms that councils can use and sometimes do use to maintain. Like, for example, there's a thing called Comply With. I know some other councils use that, and it tracks it for them.
I was just wondering what sort of tracking, you know, and you don't want to just do it just for the sake of it.
It would be sometimes a more in-depth look would provide you with a scale rather than a yes or no, which this does. It would provide a scale of you are compliant, but you could be better.
Yeah. So yeah, as a committee, we would like to think that we're complying, and if we aren't, we should know why we're not. But you know, just how resource heavy that would be, I don't know.
That's what the executive team are very interested in knowing as well. So we've identified it as a priority, and so you're asking really good questions, and we've got those same questions. So we'll be looking to see some change over the next year.
What's interesting, I suppose, is how long do you have to keep hard copies? But what would be the cost of compliance? Be huge with that many boxes in storage. So is it worthwhile digitizing the whole lot and getting rid of the boxes? We have a team of people scanning for 10 years.
We have a staff member. So in the records team, there is 5 members. One of those 5, her job is to scan and she is making progress, but as you can expect, slowly but surely. So yeah, there is things in motion to help get us there. It is just a long process. Yeah.
$2,500 a month might be cheap.
The only question I have is, it's just a little, do you use the opportunity for some of the information you're finding about non-compliance or compliance in training sessions with staff so that they're more aware? Because I'm sure you're finding things and it seems like a good opportunity to, you're updating stuff when new stuff are coming on to issues.
Yeah, so a good example of that would be Lagoima, where we have planned for this year to have training with the teams that are most crucially involved in responding to Lagoimas, because I do them, but I get the information from other teams. So those teams that are involved, to have them aware of what our requirements are and to provide training that there is plenty working days. And unless we've got a good reason, we shouldn't be going over that and talking them through that process. So yes, sometimes there is a good reason or action that we're taking as responsive to noting this.
Supplementary question that around Lagoima requests, is there a trend for there to be more? Like, how are we tracking with the volume? Because again, that's resource hungry and the timeframes can be caught in that capacity.
Yes, I would say they are on whole tracking upwards, and it wouldn't just be the one-off consent, it is the request, sorry. It is the request and then the subsequent 3 follow-up responses once you've given the response that,
for more information.
Yes, yeah, and we don't always track them in the sense of, like, that would be one request for us and we would add it on the end, but it could be 3. Yeah.
There's a risk there.
I think the great news about the strategic, or the top 9 risks that we had previously, was that one of the top ones is legislative compliance. So I'm looking forward to the deep dive into that to give us more of an understanding about what that process, that system looks like, and then also where the gaps are. And I guess the trade-offs being, will we have things sitting around because we don't, it's expensive to, for the Public Records Act, to have all of that stuff stored as we're supposed to. The trade-off in terms of not following the legislation. Yeah, go on. Any other questions?
It's a start time thing. Listen, give me a point to get to do it. I mean, even something silly like biosecurity, going and checking up all of the coal trees. I mean, how long will that take? Is that something that's hugely cost effective?
Which is
if you go through that table, there's quite a few of them that are non-compliant, but the cost of getting that extra, or that last 10% or 5%, that's where it's huge.
Yeah, and the property's going up. Yeah, the property's going up for tender.
Yeah,
the same thing again. So it's the trade-off, and I'll come back to what's the risk to the organisation if we're not applying 100%. So I think that's one of the key things that we need to ask ourselves under that process. So the recommendation in front of us is that the information be received and to provide comment on the warrant of the witness. I'm not quite sure how we're going to. Do you have enough to wrap that up?
Yeah, I have a lot of information.
Okay, so we'll work on what that looks like in terms of the specific feedback. We have Councillor Kevin moving. I'm happy to step in. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, call no carry. Thank you. The next item is 8.11 or 8.11, the review of the delegation policy and the delegation register. Okay. Over to you, Hannah.
Wonderful. So this time round, and you'll note that this is a secondary update. We went through this in July because we had the organisational restructure. So in July, we went through this to ensure that all those new staff, those roles were reflected and updated so that they were good to go, hit the ground running in July. This secondary one is more in line with our annual review where all staff have had a look at it. And there are some bigger changes than what we've done in the past. what that was is that I went through a big comparison with Christchurch City Council, and they have theirs available online to look at how they manage theirs. And I've had a chat to them over the phone. One of the main thing I really want to point out about what we have changed here is that, and this is following Christchurch City Council, is that they provide their CEO with every delegation that is not reserved for council, that is identified in the policy. And then what their CEO has the responsibility of is their legal team, for example, will say this new staff member is coming on board. They send an email, say this new staff member of this role requires the following powers, whether that is statutory delegations or warrants or both. They would list them all out, and then they would get a response from the CEO saying, yes, that is okay, and confirming that. And what that requires is, up until now, it hasn't been clear on where the CEO's powers are and where council requires that sign-off. So this was just to clarify going forward that the CEO will have the power to provide those powers that he had. Where there are additional ones, such as new bits of legislation, like a new legislation comes in, that would have to go to council. He can't delegate something that does not already exist. Where there is a policy or things like that, that wouldn't be their responsibility either to delegate that power, because that would have to go to council. So it is maintaining what council has, the autonomy, but allowing effective and better practices. So we're finding a good example would be trespass notices. We have the compliance team now, and they, I believe, could be a good option for issuing those because they are former police officers, some of them. And to allow that to happen quicker, it would allow Don or the CEO at the time to say, yes, that is okay. And my plan for this, to keep a track of it, because it could get a little bit messy, is there will be a Excel spreadsheet which will track every change that is approved through the executive, and there will be a folder in CM that will have all the emails that approve every delegation that is made, or sub-delegation, I should say. So that if at any time anyone wants to look at it and prove that this change was approved, that will all be there. Yeah.
Yeah. Any comments from committee members? I had one on page, so thank you for that. That's a really good update in giving us a picture of what that looks like. And so my concern with the Excel spreadsheet is, and I'm just hoping that that is not just with one person, that there is a team of people that know how to do that.
Yeah, that is a great point. And that will be something that myself and Ellie will be talking about, because my role in itself is intended to receive an admin by come January next year. So it will be, the plan would be that those two roles are able to help.
Thank you. Because it's all until one person is away and then it falls over, which is ironic because this is changing a delegation policy in case one person's not there. The next question was on page 44 in the general delegations. It talks about the CEO delegating to staff and contractors. So I'm just quite keen for a comment here. In what instance would the CEO's delegation go to a contractor? Is that if the contractor is the CEO?
Yeah, so great question. That is more specifically for when there is contractors doing work under legislation that we had delegation. A great example of what we've just done recently, there was a building in our district that was potentially determined to be dangerous. We got a contractor in to make that call for us and to do an in-depth report. The contractor needed the delegation or the warranted power to go on site to private property to undertake that. So we had our CEO provide them with warrants to undertake that work. Yeah,
cool. Thank you. That makes sense. The next one is also on page 44, and it says when the CEO is absent, because the CEO might be in a hui or something like that, that the general manager of business services holds the delegation. So as an example, Don's in a hui now. Does that mean that the night has the delegation? I'm just trying to, how does that work?
Yeah, and I'm very much happy to take feedback on this. So previously it would be roughly, it would say 24 hours. The only reason that I or that it was considered about removing that 24-hour is for things like warrants. Sometimes you need them a little bit quicker, and if he is in a back-to-back meeting from this to another one, it wouldn't be until the following day that we could get Manaya's position to sign those off. It was so I'm quite happy to take feedback. If you think the risk is too high and you think 24 hours is preferable, we can absolutely feed that back in.
It was more just trying to understand who has the delegation, just to make it clear. Because if we were ambivalent about it, then we could consider maybe both have the delegate. That. And so I just.
So is it a hierarchy that, if this one's not available, then that is the chain of. Yeah, that's really just what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's a minor point. Just
It's either or.
Yes, because arguably you could be. Yes, it is a fair point that it could be looked at that if Don was out for an hour, that Manaya then has all of his delegations, and I do understand that. So if it is preferable, we could put a time frame on that.
I don't have a sense from an organisational perspective what a good time frame would look like, but I was just raising the point that it would be helpful not just for Donald Manaya to have the clarity, but for people that are seeking someone to sign something off.
I think too, what arises for me is that if the other one, so Manaya is holding the delegation at a particular time, and something goes devastatingly wrong, then and we need whoever will have their delegation at that time to follow that right through. So it becomes not blame at anybody, but somebody has to head there. And in fact, it was Manaya that was heading there and had the responsibility at the time. Yeah. And if Manaya decided, oh no, Tom's back, he can have it, or the other way around, it becomes one of those things when we were talking earlier about consent of it.
Actually, sorry, go.
No, just to wrap it, I think it's something that the E-team should consider how the most appropriate way of addressing it.
Yeah, I was just going to agree with you, and also it would be good to see how that worked and then get feedback down the track. And then I'm pretty sure that you change it to how it works best for the business to be able to operate as it needs.
Yeah, thinking about it, what it could be preferable to do is to separate out two different groupings, because for me, in my role, there would the only time that you would use this within such a short time, it would never be for something large like contract signing off or really important big calls. They would maintain. It would be for signing a A&I form, for example, with lawyers, or signing a certain certificate where only Don and one other have that power. It would be signing off those certificates that are, not to trivialise them, but smaller scale because they're an easement, and having those signed off. So potentially it is a case of we look at warrants and things like that can be signed off by in that situation, and then all other things remain.
I fear that we're making things more complicated. So I'm thinking maybe we stick with what the wording is. We track, it's up to the E-team point to determine how that works, and if we could get a report back in the future, or just a quick verbal update in the future in relation to that would be fantastic. And if there's any feedback that comes of that, then we can see if there's anything else that needs to do. Right. And then the last point that I had was on the same one as well. So it says that if there are any amendments to the delegation register, as an example, the council does a resolution, or there's a written instruction from the chief executive, or that there's grammatical corrections. How is that reported back through to council that has been updated?
So those would come through in the tracking system of a Excel spreadsheet or something like that, to say this is what has been changed on this day, approved by Don with this email in CM under the following number. And it would probably be a case of yearly, we would still do that update, or if a new legislation came in, I would gather what had been done up until that date to include in the request and update.
Okay, thank you. It's just to round that one out for transparency. Unless there are any other questions, the recommendation is that the information be received and the committee provide feedback that the exec team consider how delegations are to be addressed at a report. Or at a report, sorry. Report back into the Risk and Assurance Committee.
Delegations really only important. Some we the councils have to deal with the break time when they've gone hours to do bits and pieces and what have you over the breaks and civil defence and things like that.
So Tamara's going to share the recommendation, just so that we're all on the same page. Hopefully you can read it. Which is number one, we receive, and then the feedback is that the E-team consider how the delegation between the CEO and the GMBS are addressed and give a verbal report back to the Risk and Assurance Committee in the future.
Yeah, GMBS. Yeah.
That fine? I'm happy to move for a please do a second. We have Councillor Kendall seconding. All those in favour, please say aye. Against. Matamata carried. Thank you. Cool. Thank you very much. The last item we have is in the open agenda is 8.12, which is our work program, which we'll take it read. And are you coming up for this one? Is this Kelly? Or Leslie? Or somebody? Oh, apologies, Leslie, your name is there. Yeah. So, while the team's coming up, I'll just say that after this particular meeting, I'm going to sit down with the team because my ideal work program is one page. So we're going to try and consolidate that to make it a little bit easier to read. Yeah. So straight after this meeting.
That follows along from a previous chair that always talk about policy on a page. So yeah.
Right. Excellent. Leslie, over to you for any comment.
I think it's pretty well up to date. So I don't know if you've got any feedback on things that may need to be added, perhaps, or take away.
I think within the work program, it talks about the charter being reviewed at our next meeting. Whereas when I went to the charter, it doesn't say that we'll review annually. So we just need to make that tighter, if that makes any sense. What is the? So I would imagine that it should be that we will review it every triennium. Unless there's something significant that results in us needing to change the charter. Also on there just for transparency, there are things that I think can be combined, like the IT security and the web security. And then we've also got the risk policy and the framework on there too, which I wasn't quite sure why we actually have that there on the work program, which that could potentially come through as a policy. Unless it says somewhere that the Risk and Assurance Committee has to review the risk policy and framework every year.
Yeah, I'll double check on that. I don't think it says it has to be done every year.
Yeah, because if it doesn't, then we'll just put it into the policy area.
But if it does, it's a review anyway, so we can make that.
And the other thing is on here, we're expected to review the culture, vision and values. Whereas I don't know that that's necessarily something that needs to come into this space. I'm just providing, this is what I'm going to do with it.
Yeah, because that's sort of a bit like health and safety, isn't it? That's something we need to have maybe report on not being
yeah,
it's operational.
Yeah, exactly. And I would like business continuity to be added into here because that forms part of our charter. Yeah, but it doesn't actually form part of our work program. Yeah.
So in terms of business continuity, it's on my list to do. It was also quite a big program. So I think once we're getting towards having the risk stuff fairly well embedded. So the business continuity start. Some work was done when I first started through COVID, and I did business impact assessments, which is the first step in that continuity process. I did them for facilities, operations, vets, KVS, building. Yeah, so some work has been done that will be reviewed and then carried forward into getting the business continuity plans put together.
Thank you for that update. When we do the business continuity plans, do we separate out IT and the response to any cybersecurity incidents?
Yep.
Okay.
That would be covered. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, just to get clarity on that one, will that fall within the IT security audit space or within the business continuity space that you're talking about?
It will need to be part of business continuity because they'll have a process that they will have to follow. So that would be captured as part of business continuity. Okay. And the audit is separate. That's, yeah.
Any other questions from the committee in relation to the work program? So the information, also the recommendation is that the information be received, and I think I put an action for the chair and the team to catch up in relation to consolidating the work program. Yeah, okay. I'm happy to move. Can I please have a second? Got me a lady and heading. All those in favour, please say aye. Okay. Another carried. Thank you, team. I think we need to resolve to move into public experience. Need Adrian into moving. I'm seconding. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, another carried.